Okay, so in today's video we thought we'd do a whole video on the different types of boots we use for exercise. So we'll go through what we use for schooling, hacking, jumping, cross country, and then we use slightly different boots for competing. So we'll take you through all of what we use, why and how we fit them. Okay, so we're using Maximus as a model. Excuse the state of him, he likes to roll and it's really cold, so we're going to leave him in those rugs. So we're going to start with these, which are just brushing boots, normal brushing boots, but they're fleece lined. We use these when we're schooling at home, maybe when we're at a stay away competition, and in between competing we're riding them. So they are basically just a normal brushing boot, like these ones as well. I mean, one, they look a lot nicer. And two, they're just a bit nicer on their legs. I don't tend to use them if it's really hot because they can overheat their legs and their tendons because they're quite warm, but especially in the winter they're quite nice. So the Velcro always goes towards the back and on the outside of the leg, not the inside. If you're not sure how to fit them, this is the easiest way. Sort of start it above the knee and run it down, and it will kind of go below the knee and then fit in place. So if you can see there's the knee and it fits just underneath, and then it's just kind of above the fetlock. So if the boots were too big, which I can try and actually get a bigger boot and I'll show you, it would come too far there and then they wouldn't be able to move this part, move their hoof and their fetlock back. It would get too blocked. If you're going to buy a pair of brushing boots, they often have like a size guide, a rough size guide of what size your horse is and whether maybe it's chunky, because chunkier horses need a different size of boot. Whereas like Zeb is 16.1 but actually wears the same size boots as say Jack and Max who are 14.2 because he's got quite skinny legs. Okay, so we just thought we'd show you some boots that are slightly too big. I mean, these aren't drastically too big, but I just think they're a little bit too low here. I don't like them to quite be as low because I don't want them to be restricted at all. So these are actually the back boots of these ones that he goes hacking in. So I've just put them on the front just to demonstrate, but yeah, they're just slightly too low. So these ones are the same as the fluffy ones, basically. They're just brushing boots. These ones we use when we go hacking, or sometimes when it's really wet in the school and I don't want to ruin the fluffy ones. He wears these. They do the same job, they just look slightly different. The reason I use brushing boots are, the sole purpose of them is when they move their front and back legs, if they put their legs too close together, they end up knocking themselves. So I don't know whether you can actually see, that's like, actually no, that's better. That's worn away. So that shows that's been useful, because where the boots been worn away, if they had no boots, they would knock into themselves. Some people don't like to use boots because they say they overheat their tendons. Which is true. It depends how much of a risk you want to take. I personally think there's more likelihood that they're going to knock into themselves. We tend to only put the brushing boots on when we're tacking up, and then as soon as we finish, take them off, so they're actually not on them for very long, and then wash their legs down, especially if it's really hot. So also in the summer I don't use the fluffy ones because they're more likely to overheat their tendons. But especially if a horse has got splints, which we'll maybe have to do another video about what splints are, but it basically is when they've got like a lump of extra bone on the inside, which often happens when they're young. So if they've got that, they're more likely to knock that, and then that could cause an injury from that. So we tend to use brushing boots on most of ours. There are some ponies we don't, and if they've got a lot of feather and big boned, they maybe don't, but look at how closely they move. Some horses move their front legs especially very close together and are more prone to brushing than others. The third pair of brushing boots we've got to show you. I like buying lots of boots, brushing boots, tendon boots, cross-country boots off of Facebook when I see them at a good deal. So these are the same as the hacking ones, but they're just white. So these are the boots that we generally wear when we're warming up for dressage. White is a stupid colour with horses. I don't know why we have to use them, but they make them look nicer, so that's why I use them. You could just use plain black, some people do, but white just makes them look a little bit fancier. But it is a bit stupid, especially when it's really muddy and they just get covered in mud and you have to wash them when you get home. But that's what we do, that's what we like doing. and I think Maximus quite likes them. These are actually ones I just bought secondhand. So these ones are woofwear, so we either use woofwear or Shires. I actually have a lot of Shires boots. That sizing comes up actually a bit differently, like the pony size boots I use on my horses on their front legs because they come up quite big. But if you have any questions and you want to buy some Shires boots, ask me. The woofwear come up true to size. I think woofwear are more expensive, so if I'm buying new I tend to buy Shires, but if I find them secondhand then the woofwear ones are nice as well. So next up we have some tendon boots for show jumping. So these are now slightly different. They're open at the front and the back ones are smaller, and they're harder than brushing boots. So these are designed to protect the tendons down the back of their legs, but the front is kept open so that if they hit a pole, that sounds a bit horrible, but it hurts a little bit, so then they avoid hitting the pole. That doesn't sound very nice, but that's what they are designed for. We're not trying to get any of our horses to hit poles, but obviously we want them to be careful. They are actually made, they're harder than the brushing boots, so they do protect their tendons more. The same with as with the brushing boots, and this is the same with most boots. I can't think of any boots that aren't. The Velcro always goes to on the outside and always goes to the back. So these are now different. Rather than running it down the inside to fit them, we have to run it down the back because it goes like that. I start from above the knee, as you can see, and slide it down until it slots into place like that. Again, as you can see, not too low. We don't want, if that was coming down to sort of there, he wouldn't be able to flex his fetlock and move his hoof. So you want it sitting just at the back of their fetlock there. So these show jumping boots we use for training at home, and if we're just training, like we go and have a lesson, and then we have some slightly different ones for competing. So these are actually Zeb's competition ones because poor Maximus doesn't have his own yet. Hopefully the ones I've just ordered will fit him that I bought secondhand, that are basically the same as these. They're actually woofwear and a white. The reason these are competition ones is they look a bit fancier, and they've got slightly different fastenings, and they've got, like, I don't know if you can see in there, like little holes and holes at the back so they keep the airflow to keep the tendons cool. And then these have fastenings like that. One thing you want to be careful with show jump boots is they're elasticated, and you don't want to over tighten them, because if you over tighten them, that's obviously putting a lot of strain all through the leg. You need to make sure they're tight enough they're not going to slip down, but you know, I could do that and make it to the tightest one, but that's putting too much pressure on the front of his leg. You want to kind of pull with a little bit of tension, but don't over pull and tighten. So you can see I can't get my whole finger, but there is movement in there. Then, so the backs, these basically just sit all the way down, like over his fetlock. So with this, I would start below the hock and slide down. That sits a lot lower, and again, just above the fetlock. So next up are cross-country boots, which are different. Maximus's cross-country boots are the Dalmar, and then Zeb has Verdus, which I'll show you in a minute. So the reason these are different to brushing boots is they've got hard strike bits like down the front and down the back, again to protect even more, because obviously cross-country over show jumping, if they were to hit the jump, it's solid, it's a lot harder. So all we're ever trying to do is prevent injury. So that's the difference. If cross-country boots generally are a bit more expensive, maybe if you're not going cross-country all the time, you don't want to spend that, then, you know, we do take our ponies that we've got in to sell, often ride them in brushing boots, but all my event horses get ridden in cross-country boots. Same thing again, up like that, all the way down till it sits in place, and then the Velcro goes all the way around there. So a lot of cross-country boots then have like this meshy bit, so all they're trying to do, because they're galloping, their legs are getting hot, we're trying to get the air to go in, so you can see they're air cooled, and then they're designed to not hold the water once they've gone through the water, because often they might have to go through the water very early on in the course and gallop for another 3-4 minutes, even longer if you're Zeb, where their cross-country courses can be 8 to 10 minutes. So exactly the same guard on the front and the back. A lot of the cross-country boots do vary, so I'm going to show you these two, but there are a lot of different makes. So these are Zeb's cross-country boots. They're just like with everything, you've got different price ranges. So the Dalmar ones are still expensive. These are slightly more expensive. So Zeb did wear the Dalmar, and I actually love Dalmar. I've got loads. So Todd wears Dalmar boots, Maximus wears Dalmar boots. However, Zeb was fine, and then they started rubbing him slightly. Not really sure why they don't rub any of my other horses. He is a little bit sensitive. I'm not sure if it was the way they were sitting. I've got loads of different pairs, so I kept trying different pairs in case it was just that one particular pair. But they did, unfortunately, which is such a shame because I really like them. They're actually maybe a fraction too small for Maximus on the front. Zeb's got smaller and narrower legs than Maximus. Again, Velcro to the outside, stripe pad down the front and the back, and these, they're higher on the inside, just again to protect, but then allow all the movement through the fetlock. So if I take them out galloping or do some interval training in the park or go to the gallops and I'm doing lots of canter work, I'd wear the cross-country boots, just because their legs are more likely to overheat. So with the cross-country boots, although you don't need the protection, I like the airflow, and they provide more airflow than the brushing boots. Whenever I'm galloping, going cross-country or going to the gallops, I put overreach boots on. Overreaching is when the back foot comes too far forward, goes down like that, and then pulls the shoe off, and two can obviously injure all of that. So they're basically doing that. Some horses are more prone to overreaching than others. This horse is. You'll hear, if I don't have overreach boots on, even when I do sometimes, you can hear the clanking of his back shoes hitting his front. So got different ones. So obviously these are with the sheepskin, these are without. I often use the sheepskin when they're going cross country. It just gives them a bit more like protection, because there's more of it, and it covers more of their foot than these. These are actually Zeb's ones, so Maximus has got bigger feet, so they may be a little bit small. As you can see, not all brushing boots, it depends. If they're more expensive, they tend to have this bit here, which basically sits in there and stops the overreach boots turning round. I've put them in behind the fetlock, and then I'm velcroing. As you can see, they're actually a bit small. Velcro goes at the front, and then again, they are a bit small. You want that to be slightly lower to the ground, because he could still actually overreach and take his shoe off. So as you can see, if I was cross-countrying, that's just protecting more of his leg. Should fit him a bit better. So again, they've actually still got that bit which sits in there, stops them turning. Put them on. So that's a much better fit. Can you see how that's sort of like, it's not actually touching the ground, it's just above. They fit him a lot better. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the video on the different types of boots we use, why we use them, how we fit them. I hope it's been helpful. I can do more videos if you want anything else, or you're a bit confused about anything. Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed it, and see you for the next one.